what do I think about Shadowdark's Norse-inspired campaign setting? Well, I came into it with some pretty high expectations because the previous settings were so good. But I have to say that the Norse setting is, hey folks, I'm William, this is Runeforged, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at Shadowdark's Norse-inspired campaign setting from Curse Scroll 3, The Midnight Sun. I've really enjoyed both the Cursed Forest and Desert settings from the previous Curse Scrolls, so I have really high expectations for this one as well. Doubly so because I love Vikings and Norse mythology in general, and I'm hoping to run a Norse-inspired campaign this winter. So I'm on the lookout for good material to steal for my own Norse-adjacent setting. All right, so I've got the introduction to the Isles of Andrik mini hexcrawl pulled up, and the flavor says, ice-rimmed isles with plunging fjords and towering peaks. Drakes nestle high in these foreboding mountains, and the mystical dverg toil deep within their roots. Hardscrabble fishers and farmers gather in smoky longhouses during the Arctic long dark, consulting with their far-eyed seers about what the fates and the old gods plan for them. When the spring brings the midnight sun, they transform into howling sea wolves, sailing to distant shores in dragon-headed longboats to raid for gold and glory. Yep, it's a really great intro. I'm really not surprised at this point. I feel like Kelsey always does a really good job of clearly and concisely identifying the core fantasy of the various different settings that she's built, and I'm happy to report that Isles of Andrik is no exception. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the rumors table here. A wise old woman lives on a large forested isle to the south. Okay. The gods have imparted a dire omen to the seer of Valthus. A seawolf king lies in repose somewhere inside the sea caves. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that is related to the 0-level gauntlet that's included with this curse scroll. So looking forward to seeing more about that. A sea serpent with silver scales lurks in the waters to the south. Secretive dwarves build incredible cities inside the mountains. That's awesome. I hope that we see a pretty significant dwarf presence in this hex crawl. I'm just a big fan of dwarves in general, especially like Norse themed dwarves. So I'm glad to see that they are getting some love here. The nymphs of the sea will not harm a talented musician. Awesome. Yeah, so I think that actually comes pretty much directly from Norse mythology. I don't know if it was nymphs specifically, but I definitely know there is a creature that is like kind of musically themed. And if I'm remembering correctly, like if you treat them well, they will teach you how to play music really well. But if you don't, like it's going to end badly. So I'm glad to see that spirit lives on here, even if it's not I don't think it's a nymph. I think it's some sort of other type of creature. I'll have to look it up and figure it out. All right. Magical places are hidden in the lost forests of the Isles. Okay. Freya's spirits protect the graves of warriors who fell in battle. I'm guessing that is related to Valkyries, which is very exciting. I'm a big fan of Valkyries in general. An intelligent bear roves the foothills to the south of Skargat. Okay, cool. I'm curious to see what impact this bear has on the rest of the setting. And then, okay, there are 2 doors to Alfheim. One is green, one is blue. Okay, cool. So there's like a little bit of a riddle here. I'm curious to know how big of a role Alfheim's going to play in the setting. I'm a big fan of Alfheim in general and elves, so hopefully a pretty big part. All right, let's go ahead and look at the encounters here. It's aquatic storm giant, sea serpent, sharks, hydra, orcas. Okay, that's new. Sea hag, sea nymph, and merfolk. Okay, I mean that seems reasonable to me. Nothing sticks out here as particularly crazy. Yeah, seems reasonable to me. Okay. Flyer, we've got Greater Drake, Lesser Drake, which are both new creatures, so we'll take a look at those later. Ghost, Will-O-Wisps, Stingbats, let's see, 1d6 giant bats. Interesting, I don't really associate bats with Norse mythology, but that's okay. We've also got fairies and vultures. Yep, seems reasonable to me. I'm especially interested to hear more about these drakes, which I assume are going to be some sort of dragon, maybe some sort of wingless dragon. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I love dragons, so it doesn't really matter to me. Next, we've got Walker. Let's see. Winterwolf, Wolves, Draugr, Wieldhag, Troll, Brown Bear Tree Ant Dryad. Yeah, these are right on brand, exactly what I would expect from a Norse setting. No complaints about those at all. I am curious to see what the interpretation of the Draugr is going to be here. I think it's a really cool creature, and yeah, I'm just curious to see what it looks like. Then we've also got Raiders, which are 3d6 Berserkers and a longbow. Okay, that checks out. Dverg, Elves, Bandits, Peasants, Nords, Oracles, and Valkyrie. Yep, like I said, just with all the other entries, it seems very thematic and on brand for a Norse setting. I don't have any real complaints about the list overall. I will say that I only see Storm Giant on here for giants in general. I also really heavily associate Norse mythology with fire and frost giants, and I don't see those on this list. Not that it would be hard to bring them in, but I definitely feel like they are a core part of Norse mythology, and I'm kind of surprised that we don't see them represented in here somewhere. Hopefully they'll just be on the map of the campaign itself. Otherwise, we'll just add them. It's really not that big of a deal. But yeah, overall, so far so good. I'd say we're off to a very solid start for this mini hex crawl. Regardless, I hope you are enjoying the video so far. If so, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss out on more awesome content like this in the future. All right, let's take a look at some of these new monsters. So first up here, we've got Drakes, and we've got two different versions. We've got Lesser and Greater, levels 8 and 6 respectively. They look pretty similar in terms of abilities. Immune to fire, that makes sense. Fire Gout, which is like an AoE fire attack versus looks like a single target fire breath attack. Okay, yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable to me. I like the fact that they are a little bit scaled down in terms of level, so we don't have to wait quite so long to start fighting dragons or dragon-adjacent creatures in the middle of the campaign. So I think that's really nice. Next, we've got Draugr, ragged undead warriors dripping with blue-black grave rot. A chill follows them, and they can swim through stone. Oh, interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That's an interesting tidbit. Just scanning here really quick. Level 5. So these are pretty significant threats. Given that they're so high level, I probably will also include some lower level undead threats, maybe some skeletons. I think wights are maybe level 3 or something. So I'd probably include some skeletons, zombies, and wights in the game as well. I just might call them like lesser Draugr or something like that. But yeah, level 5 Draugr seems like a pretty significant threat. That's really interesting. Can only be damaged by silver or magical sources. That's pretty dangerous. Death Chill. Checks to stabilize dying creatures within near of the Draugr are DC 18. Oh, that's awesome. I really like that ability. I might introduce that on more very dangerous creatures. I think that's just a really elegant kind of way to increase the drama of the scene. So yeah, I think I might be adding that to a lot of different creatures in the future. I like that rule quite a bit. And then Stone Swim. Draugr can pass through stone as if it were water. Cool. That's a really interesting and potentially very scary ability. So excited to use that one at the table. Next, we've got Dverg, stocky gnomes who dwell in the mountain halls shaped by their peerless craftsmanship. They have rosy cheeks, sparkling eyes, and prodigious beards. All right, so level 3, and they can shapeshift, which is consistent with what we see in Norse mythology for dwarves. They've also got some stats here for just like a basic, looks like a sea wolf kind of class for NPCs in the Nord, so that makes sense to me. They've also got an oracle, which I assume, yep, looks like it's just a level 4 version of a seer that you can use as an NPC. I appreciate that. Sea serpent. Massive sea snakes with gauzy fins, scales, and serrated fangs. Okay, so this is a level 12 creature. It moves really fast. Double near swim, makes sense. I mean, this all checks out. I am a little bit disappointed that there's no ability associated with the creature. I like to have at least one kind of flavor ability to go along. Even in the Shadowdark monsters, I like to have at least one, just to kind of spice things up a little bit. Right now, it's just kind of like a big bag of hit points and some damage, which is not exactly what I'm looking for in a monster encounter. Maybe some sort of ability related to poison, because I know like Sea Serpent maybe based on Jormungand, who has like poison breath or some sort of poison fangs would have been appropriate, or maybe some sort of like constricting move or something that makes it really dangerous against boats. I think that would have been a cool little inclusion. And if I do end up running a Sea Serpent in my game, I probably will add an extra ability or two just to make it a little bit more of an exciting encounter. Let's look at Deep Trolls. Wretched subterranean trolls with inky hide and fiery eyes. Okay. This is a level 8 monster, and they have regeneration. Okay, makes sense. Oh, that's an interesting little twist. Okay, so regains hit points on its turn unless injured by a cold iron weapon the prior round. So it's kind of like a fey take on a troll, which I think makes sense. But interestingly, not fire or acid that hurts these trolls. So that's a little bit of a twist, and that might catch players a little bit off guard. So I think that's kind of interesting. All right, Valkyries, angelic warrior women who Freya sends to carry the souls of worthy warriors who fall in battle to the halls of Valhalla. Fantastic. Love me some Valkyries. Oh, they're level 14. That is a little bit higher than what I was expecting. Like, that means that they are literally more powerful than the drakes in this setting, which is kind of nuts. Level 14, I could definitely see for maybe like the leader of the Valkyries. I think that makes sense. But man, level 14 Valkyries, they are really, really tough. Good luck trying to fight one of those. And also, I think the seer can summon them as like part of a spell. That's a really powerful ally to have. I think it lasts for like 10 rounds or something. So that's pretty wild in terms of power. But I mean, it's pretty cool. So I can't really complain. Impervious can only be injured by magical sources. That makes sense. Divine Courage, immune to morale checks. Hostile spells targeting Valkyries are DC 18 to cast. Yeah, cool. Makes sense to me. There are always more like cool abilities that we could add to the Valkyrie to kind of spice it up a little bit, but I think that hits like the core of the class, or of the monster. NPC. I will say it would be kind of cool to have some sort of like chooser of the dead ability, maybe like some sort of resurrection, or just something that flavor wise ties into their status as choosers of the dead to pick souls to go to Valhalla. I think that would be kind of cool and thematic. All right, Werebear, a mighty long-haired humanoid that walks with a rolling gait. All right, level 7. Can only be damaged by silver or magical sources. That checks out. Crush, I like that. And then Lycanthropy, which looks pretty similar to what the werewolf has from the base rules. So cool. I love werebears. I think those are pretty, I don't want to say they're common necessarily in Norse myth, but they definitely appear, or at least like intelligent kind of bears or humanoid kind of bears, similar to kind of Bjorn from the Hobbit. So yeah, I like that. No complaints about that at all. Overall, I think the new monster list is very solid. Of course, there are a couple of other types of creatures that I would add if the lists are my own, but I understand there is a limited amount of time and space to put these things out, so I understand if there's not quite as many monsters as I would like to see. I just feel like Norse mythology is so rich in terms of the various different like creatures and spirits that are represented that you could really go on to make a pretty extensive list of creatures, if you have the time and resources to do so. I definitely think that if I end up running a homebrew version of a Norse mythology inspired setting, I'll definitely have a pretty beefy bestiary set up before I start the game. So really looking forward to that. So seasons and sea travel. I've actually already read through these briefly, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. I'll just say that on a brief look through of the seasons and sea travel rules, they look really cool. I'm not usually a big fan of like nautical themed adventures, but I think in a Viking setting, one, you almost have to, and two, I think these rules are straightforward enough and check enough of the boxes thematically that it sounds pretty cool to run kind of a more nautical themed game in a Norse setting. So overall, based on just a very quick look and not having a lot of frame of reference, I say that these rules look pretty solid. So I probably will be using these in my game if we do end up running the campaign in Shadowdark. So A+, no notes. All right, let's take a quick look here at the map before we dive in. Okay, so it looks like it is like a chain of islands. The hexes are 6 miles each, so that's good. They've kept that from the last one, from Dejurum, like the desert hexcrawl was also, I think, 6 miles a hex, whereas the original Gloaming map, I think probably like pretty much one of the only complaints I had about it was that each hex was like, it was like maybe 2 or 3 mile or something. And I just did not play well with the hex map rules that were in the core rules. Somebody commented on a previous video saying that when Kelsey made the Gloaming hex map, she really hadn't fully nailed down the overland travel rules, and that's kind of like why that they didn't mesh very well. So that makes a lot of sense to me, but I am very happy that we are moving and sticking with a 6 mile hex, because that just makes things a lot easier in my experience. All right, let's take a look at this map. Series of islands checks out. Looks like we got some sort of fish, or that's probably a sea serpent down here at 910. We got a whirlpool maybe at 103 or 1003. Got boats all around here. I wonder if I don't think those have significance though, because there's no like like bolding around the hex, or they don't have hex numbers or whatever. So I'm not going to worry about those too much. We've got a couple different villages scattered around here. Looks like, oh, that's probably 407. Looks like maybe some dwarf stuff or maybe some giants. That would be exciting. Yeah, cool. I mean, no complaints about the overall map itself. It looks like it is a little bit smaller than what we saw in some of the other curse scrolls, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. As a general rule, I prefer to run kind of shorter campaigns anyway, so I don't think that this is a bad size at all. So far so good. I think we're looking good. All right, so I have gone through and I've read through the entire Isles of Andrik's hexcrawl key. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Isles of Andrik hex key. So I went through and read through all the different locations. I could go through them one at a time, but man, that would just make for a really long video. Let me know down in the comments if you guys really do want me to go through each individual one. Like, I'm happy to do it. I just don't know if people are going to stick around if I do. But my overall thoughts, let me see. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, okay, so I do like the fact that they introduced like several different like human villages, and there's like some political kind of intrigue and some faction warfare going on here, which I really appreciate and I think is a good idea. And they put in some different like adventure hooks for different ways that these kind of political rivalries might play out. And there's in my head, there's this really cool thing that could happen. Like, there is like this place where all the different clans go like once a year. I think it's called like Drakenfell. Yeah, Drakenfell. And it's like this place where they all go to like commune and do rituals and stuff. And when they're there, they're not like supposed to hurt each other, like draw blood or whatever, but it says that there's sometimes like some subterfuge stuff that goes on. And I think it would be kind of cool if all the different clans met up at that place and then there was like some shenanigans afoot, and maybe some of these political rivalries, you know, resolve themselves in some way, you know, one way or the other at that meeting. I think that would be a really cool and kind of interesting scenario to play out. So we'll have to see if that comes up at all in a game. But yeah, I do actually like the kind of human-centric focus of a lot of the hexes in this little hex crawl. All right, let's see. Let's take a look at 504 sea nymphs. 12 sea nymphs play fluting music on the bay at high tide. They reward an orb to a musician who accompanies them well, that lets the person breathe water once a day. And then they try to drown all others. This is very on brand for Norse or Fae-inspired stories, so I'm a big fan. I also really enjoy the fact that it starts out very like happy and nice, like, oh cool, we're all gonna get along and we're gonna play music and you're gonna give me an item or whatever. But then the last line is, what does it say? If you don't do that, they're just gonna drown you. So I kind of like that very strange dichotomy that you often see with a lot of Fae-inspired creatures. Like, yeah, they might help you or they might just try to kill you. I just really like that, especially in the context of a tabletop RPG. You know, that gives the players a chance to fight if they want to fight, but it also gives players who are more interested in like the social side of things to resolve things peacefully. So I think that's a nice little balance there. And I like the fact that both options are available. All right, we've also got a couple different portals to the realm of Alfheim, which I think is very cool. I really like the fact that there are, at least 2 different ways to get there, and also kind of plays into the notion of like J-quazing the dungeon, but like J-quazing your campaign setting in terms of like having different ways to get to a certain place. I think that's very cool. And I also like that it's not just as easy as like, oh, I found the door and I can immediately kind of walk in. There's either some sort of like trick or some sort of like drama that goes along with the process of crossing over into the realm of Alfheim. So I really appreciate that too. As expected, based on our look at the map, there is also a sea serpent there in kind of the southern sea area. Although it has a little bit of a twist in that it doesn't just want to necessarily kill you and eat you immediately, although it may still do that. There is something that it is looking for and that it wants. So there is an opportunity, again, for the players to kind of figure out what that thing is and maybe use it as some sort of bargaining chip. I think that's a very cool little plot hook. And again, it opens up the possibility of either fighting the creature, although that would be incredibly dangerous, or, working with it to achieve some secondary goal that may have some additional benefits down the line. So again, I really like that implementation. Yeah, so there's also a dwarven city, which also has a unique means of entry, which I won't spoil. But again, I just love the fact that it's not as simple as going up and knocking or breaking down the front doors. Like there's a little bit more to it than that. And I think that additional flavoring really elevates it as a location. And I'm also really excited about the fact that the dwarves have a bit of a troll problem when the characters show up. Yeah, I think I'm just a big fan of trolls in general, especially in a Norse setting. So I'm, again, happy to see that they got some representation on the hexcrawl. So very, very nice. Yeah, I mean, I think overall, just about the hexcrawl in general, I think it's pretty solid. But I think, and again, this kind of ties into the main issue that I kind of have with these mini hexcrawls is I love the stuff that's there, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff that gets left on the table that could have been added that would have been very cool. You know, I understand this is meant to be kind of a just a source of inspiration for GMs who might want to run in this setting, and there's a lot of room for us to kind of mix and match and build our own thing while still having a place to start, which I do really appreciate. But I do think it would have been cool to see some more representation for some other like classically Norse inspired monsters like giants, drakes. I did see that there was an area, like I think in the northeast of the map, it was like the Drake Mountains or something. And obviously there's probably going to be drakes up there, but it would have been cool if there was like a lair or a specific drake that was mentioned, because I think that would be kind of cool. Also, I didn't see anything here for like wolves, especially like a giant wolf, which I think would have been pretty cool. Although I know that we did have like one of those in Curse Scroll 1, so maybe Kelsey was just like, we already had one of those. Let's do something different. But wolves seem like a really important and critical piece to, or a really central creature to like Norse mythology, and I do wish that we'd had some included, but it really doesn't matter because I'll just add one anyway, so it's not a big of a deal. Also, I don't think there was any mention of Draugr on the map. I think it would have been cool to have some sort of like ruins or like burial grounds or barrow mounds to explore, and I'll probably end up adding that as well, but we didn't see any of that. Yeah, and then my note says here, yeah, we definitely need a burial mound in here somewhere, which I future me also agrees with. Not a lot of classical Norse locations either, like the World Tree or Mimir's Well. But again, those are pretty easy to add in. But I think I was just surprised that I didn't see more classically Norse related creatures and locations on the map. But again, like it's super easy to add that stuff in for yourself, especially if you have a well-formed notion of what these things should look like. So it's really not that big of a loss. So yeah, I'd say overall the hex crawl is pretty solid, but like in my previous reviews of other curse scrolls, like I do wish that there had been a little bit more. I think I did go back and look. I think that this curse scroll 3 Isles of Andrik hexcrawl is only like 3 pages, and I'm like 99% sure that the previous ones were like 4 or 5 pages. So we definitely got a little bit less content in this hexcrawl than we have on the other ones. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but it was definitely noticeable when I was going through. It was definitely left me with a feeling of, oh, that's it. Like I wanted to read more about some cool stuff, but again, not the end of the world. There's also a couple other cool setting related things in Curse Scroll 3. For example, there's an example of a monastery raid as well as a level 0 gauntlet / dungeon. I don't think I'm going to cover those in this video. I think I might actually end up using those in whatever winter themed game that I end up running this year. So I don't want to talk about those until I've actually had a chance to run them at the table. But what are my overall thoughts on Shadowdark's Norse-inspired campaign setting? Well, I came into this with some pretty high expectations because the previous settings are so good. But I have to say that the new Norse setting is pretty solid. But unlike the Cursed Forest and Desert settings from previous Curse Scrolls, which I think I would use mostly as is, I probably won't use the Isles of Andrik as the base for my Norse-inspired campaign. And I'll probably just pick and choose some of the elements that I like the most and plug those into my own homebrew setting. Let me know down in the comments if you are interested in seeing either a video or a series of videos where I flesh out my own homebrew Norse-inspired setting. In the meantime, be sure to check out my other Shadowdark related videos, which should be popping up on your screen. But I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day. Bye.